Hello everyone, and welcome back to World of Warships Blitz with Terry. Today we are looking at Tier 8 of the new German Battlecruiser line. And this one's a bit of an oddball, because this is the Zieten. Probably named after General Zieten, who was a Prussian cavalry general back around in the 1600s, I believe. This is a very, very strange looking ship. I mean, let's just take a look at it. It's got, first of all, the layout. It's got this massive superstructure sitting there in the middle. It's got one turret forward, and it's got two turrets in the rear. And all in all, it just looks very odd. Like, it doesn't quite fit in. It looks a bit front heavy in some way. So I got curious, and I went to see where this came from. So the details here are not particularly helpful, but there are some hints in here that were helping to get to it. So first of all, they mention that this is a fast battleship. Now, fast battleships are not the same as battle cruisers. Fast battleships is what you get when you combine the speed of a battle cruiser with the protection and firepower of an actual battleship. So that was interesting, and it says it can be traced back to battlecruiser projects not long before World War I. So I went and started digging a little bit. And the actual Wargaming official World of Warships wiki mentions that this is a sort of modernized version of a project called GK 4531. So I got really curious, because that's not something I had heard before. So I started looking into that. And it turned out that towards the end of the First World War, the Germans were actually working on quite a lot of battlecruiser designs or similar designs that never got implemented because the war ended and then everything just, went sideways. But this is one of the series of later designs which were called Großkampfschiffe. That's where the GK came from. And this probably really better translates to, it literally means large fighting ships. Better translates to something like battle cruisers, because that was kind of the intent. Although they hadn't armored them quite as well as you would usually you see on a fast battleship. So what does that number stand for? Because, it's German, so the number must have a significance. It can't be a serial number because it's way too large. It turns out that the first two digits of that number, so the 45, stand for displacements. So this would have been a 45,000 ton displacement. The 3, as the third digit, stands for the number of turrets. So a 45,000 displacement with 3 turrets. And the last digit, the 1, is just the serial number of the design that matches the specification. These things were designed with 420mm guns. But we don't quite get those here. We are instead getting 406mm guns. All right then, so let's take a closer look at what that thing is and what it can do and what it isn't. I think first I'm going to need to tidy this up, because I still got this from the last video. So Zieten, and we're going to put the Bismarck in here. And actually, since we're at tier 8, let's put the Odin as well. Because Odin, while it's a very, very different ship, is a very, very good ship at tier 8. So let's begin with the Bismarck. And yes, obviously we have the secondary focus again that we have on this line. So we've got 2 secondary overload 2 versus 1 on the Bismarck. In return, we don't get the precise aiming. And we don't get the Hydro 2 that the Bismarck gets. So Bismarck sonar has a range of 4.5 kilometers. Whereas Zieten's range is only 3.75 kilometers. So not quite as effective. The Bismarck is obviously better armored. But once again, the armor plating seems to be, the difference in armor plating seems to be mainly concentrated around the citadel protection. So I did mention that in one of the earlier videos, that the traditional German battleship line, the more historic German battleship line, actually has a special mechanic in that if you are able to penetrate the armor, and you would be getting a citadel, you still have to get through the what they call turtleback armor mechanic. I don't know if the battle cruisers have that. I suspect they don't. So with a smaller hit point pool and a less well protected internals, this ship is a battle cruiser once more. We'll stick with the battle cruiser for now, and is definitely not as much of a brawler as you would have in the Bismarck. She is slightly more maneuverable than the Bismarck, however, but she only gets 6 guns, but these 6 guns are actually larger. So these are 406mm guns that we previously used to get on the Freddy. Now the Freddy has the Kurfürst's 420s, whereas the Kurfürst has been up to 457. So here we are again. We get these guns. They are reloading rapidly because there's only 6 of them. The biggest issue is the gun layout, because there's only one forward. They obviously do more damage than the guns on the Bismarck, but have a shorter range. And this is kind of typical for the Battlecruiser line, that the main guns don't quite have the range that you get on the traditional battleship line, which also doesn't already have a great range to begin with. So these things are not good at range. Secondary-wise, she does get more secondaries actually than the Bismarck, and the only difference really is that you can use the high explosive on these 150mm secondaries, but you get a total of 12. No, actually it's the same. Sorry, never mind. It's the same as the Bismarck, it's just a different setup. The auto secondaries are the same technically, 105mm dual purpose guns, but they get a faster reload and the longer range. And obviously the Zieten gets torpedoes. These are the Scout Cruiser Sea Mines that we already seen before, with the same 75-second reload, 9.6km range, and you get 2 quad launches of it. The AA is surprisingly even a little bit better than Bismarck, so they have caught up a little bit, and the surface detection is not terrible with 10km base. Comparing her to, say, the Odin, which is a very, very good ship at tier 8, Zieten has more hit points. Again, it's the citadel protection where it really sits, and the Odin's maneuverability is one of the really, really strong points of that ship, where Zieten is not quite there. Obviously, Odin has smaller guns, but the torpedoes are even longer range. Where are they? There. Yeah, the torpedoes are even longer range on the Zieten, but they are not quite as quick. And obviously the Odin gets the Großer Kurfürst secondaries at tier 8, which are superior to those on the auto secondaries, which are superior to those that you find on the Zieten. So, all right then. Let's look at the Odin and let's look at this thing. It's pretty chunky as well. So if you compare it to Bismarck, Bismarck is a relatively sleek ship. This kind of, it really looks awkward, just optically. It looks almost like something that the British cooked up. Reminds me a bit of a town class cruiser of some sort. But yeah, anyway. This is a tricky ship to play. This is a really tricky ship to play. Let's look at the first and obvious question, the gun layout. It's not just that you have the Gneisenau's guns, but you also have them rearward oriented. So there is a bit of a saving grace to it, and that's that the rearmost turret is 360 degrees. So you can kind of, if you need to go bow in, you can kind of do this and then do that and get them swung around reasonably quickly. But it's still awkward because you need to give a relatively large side of angle. You can't go perfectly bow in because then you absolutely have no firepower anymore. Which means that even more so than on the previous tiers, this ship is really, really dependent on positioning. And as such, we don't even need to talk about the elite bonus. As such, we get to the build question again. First slot, easy, secondary battery mod. The other slots, not so easy. You could, very much, and I have tried this as well, play with concealment. And then use slot 2 for steering. this would net you a turn time from 13 seconds, which isn't great, but it's kind of just about manageable. And you would get a concealment of 9 kilometers, which is good, which is really good for a tier 8. You could also, like what I've just done, do the traditional setup and go with this one, which would net you a higher acceleration of 18 seconds, which is pretty good, and your turn time just under 13 seconds in the 12-second range. It's a really tricky question, and I can't say that I personally prefer one over the other right now. The third build that I haven't really tested yet would be double steering. And again, this is something I might actually have to try out and see if that works better, because that would get your turn time under 12 seconds, and that would be pretty okay levels by then. But I'll put it back to what I've been playing with for the time being. I know that the concealment build is relatively popular, and like I've already said in the last video, the concealment build is kind of useful at the onset because it allows you to get into position. But after that, you're effectively not going to use it anymore for the rest of the battle until you are so low on health that you need to disengage. And I generally prefer having something that I can actually make use of during the battle. And especially for something that needs to fight in mid-range, but does not have the armor. Having maneuverability and being able to, get yourself out of positions again is also not a bad thing. But yeah, this is a very, very awkward ship to play, because if you get spotted early and focused, you will absolutely get blown out of the water in this thing. And the gun layout means you can't play bow in at all, because you only get one gun with one turret with 2 guns pointing forward, which means you have to sort of, if you need to do anything at range, you have to sort of angle almost 45 degrees, which means you will take a serious amount of damage from ranged fire. Alternatively, you just don't use your guns at all at the onset, but then you can't really push on this thing either because it doesn't have the armor for it. So you need to make yourself useful at the beginning of the battle and find yourself a position or stick with the line, which then the range comes into play. So like the rest of the Battlecruiser line, plays very well at mid-range and brawls, but you got to be amazingly careful with this thing, that you're not getting into positions where you get focused. You need to find your one-on-one battles in some way. Anyway, let's look at the commander. I have actually switched things up a little bit here, and I have used the generalist instead of the recon skill, because honestly, you need every bit of health and every bit of assistance that you can get in this thing. The close quarters combat expert is an obvious choice, and APCS would be, and then probably horizontal protection expert for what good it does you in the higher tiers. So if I have to compare this to playing, say, Bismarck or maybe Odin more, I would say it almost plays like a tier 8 Gneisenau, but worse. The guns are fun and they hit hard. They definitely hit hard. That much I can tell, but you only have 6 of them, and the layout is really awkward on this ship. And you just don't have the armor to withstand an awful lot of things. So, yeah. Anyway, last look. Let's have a look at the camouflage. You can put the very pretty camo on, which gives you all the good things here. Once again, for hit points, range on both main and secondaries, and torpedoes. These camos are very, very good. They're not the general purpose historical battleship camos, but they're specialized towards extending your range, such that it allows you to play more on mid-range and get into points where you can do something with the secondaries. So I think this is, and I haven't tested tier 9 and 10 yet, but I think this was probably the hardest ship to play out of the ones that I've tried so far. So 6 was easy. 7 was starting to be a challenge. This was definitely not easy to play. So let's go and get into some battles. In the first battle, it's a tier 8 game, so we're top tier. And we're playing against an August von Pasewalk, an Amagi, another Zieten on the enemy team, a Bismarck, a Vittorio, hang on, how was that? Veneto, not Vittorio Veneto, not Veneto. I think somebody corrected me, and I hope I did it right this time. And Indianapolis and a Yukikaze, and I totally can't remember what the Yukikaze is capable of, so if we see it, we'll shoot it. Anyway, what do you do in this thing? Well, depends where you spawn. So right here, we're going to give fire support, obviously, around Sea Cup. Fortunately, there are a couple of islands that we can make use of. Unfortunately, we're not on the side that has the center island inside the cup, and we're obviously going to have to keep an eye on where the carrier is going. We do have a destroyer on our side, so we can a confusingly named Kagero, and we'll be lending what AA support we possibly can, and make use of our hit points as much as possible. But yeah, even if you're just in a tier 8 game, it can get really difficult in this ship. So there comes the carrier. AP bombs, obviously better suited against me, so let's see what he's doing. Yeah, he noticed me. And there go the first 10,000 hit points, so that's my first heal going down. There's Indianapolis. And he's obviously a bit of a problem when it comes to the destroyers. Our carrier has completely missed him, so mostly missed him. There comes the enemy carrier. No there's the flood, yeah, of course. And as you can see, just from one carrier wave, we've already taken effectively 20,000 points of damage. We can do a little bit against the Indianapolis, but we do have to be careful with the Amagi. Now with the secondary overload, I can actually reach, because there's no destroyer here. The destroyer is probably on the other side. I haven't seen him, so I'm going to use the secondary overload to hammer the Indianapolis, because he's the most dangerous against the Kagero, and obviously shooting at him. But there comes Amagi again. And that Amagi has also just chunked 10,000 hit points out of my health pool. This thing reminds me a little bit of Constellation, to be honest. It's a bit of a glass cannon, really, and it's reasonably difficult to make it work. There comes the carrier again. Obviously, if I had imagine I had the concealment build, it would have done absolutely no good at all. And that's another 10,000 hit points gone. It would have done absolutely nothing at all because the carrier would have spotted me early on. So I'm just using the island here to shield myself from incoming fire. And there comes a Miyoko, so I'm going to let a Japanese heavy cruiser tank for me for a little bit. And wait until my heal comes of cooldown. There we go. And then we're going to recover a little bit of hit points. But yeah, it's not easy. There's the Amagi. Now generally, if you're in a tier 8 battleship, Amagis are food, because Amagis don't have the greatest armor. But we have a different thing here to shoot at. There's a Bismarck over here. So guns out, and he doesn't even seem to be looking at me. I'm going to drop some torpedoes in his general direction, but I think he's going to die to Kagero torpedoes, or Miyoko torpedoes, or my torpedoes, or my main guns, depending on who's hitting him first. But yeah, he's sailing in a straight line, not looking where he's going, left, right, and center. So and that sort of thing, you can farm some easy damage. And yeah, the Kagero takes him out. But now the Miyoko is going up against the Amagi, and there's still that carrier around. I still have the secondary overload up. I can still make some use of it, but at this range, my secondaries don't do an awful lot. And the Amagi is ignoring the cruiser that's sitting broadside on there, and is preferring to shoot at me. That's just new ship press account things that happen. But I'm switching over to the high explosive with the secondaries, because you can do that. And against it, if I'm going to go for damage over time, because I cannot sustain a close range fight with an Amagi like this, even with support from the cruiser, then setting a fire is not a bad thing sometimes. And I am trying to duke shots here a little bit and disengage. And I've got my last heal coming of cooldown. So that shot of the Amagi does mostly. I've managed to dodge some torpedoes in his direction, but I think he's disengaging. So he's had about enough. That fire, and there's another fire. These fires have definitely helped. And yeah, the 150s are not bad at setting fires. The dispersion on the main guns is actually pretty okay, and they hit reasonably hard. The problem is obviously against something like an Amagi, and he catches me in the turn. Even though just some of his guns hit me, I'm down to 12,000 hit points and I have no heal left, and we're just about halfway through the battle. But with combined efforts, we've gotten the Amagi dealt with. The carrier is being chased by a destroyer, but it looks like, yeah, the carrier has taken out our Kagero. Yeah, these things are dangerous. So if he manages to dodge the Kagero torpedoes, and now he's gone undetected, I don't have any more heals left. So this has been a surprisingly hard fight, and I've just been fighting pretty much an Amagi. Amagis are not known, and a carrier obviously, are not known for their... are not known to be particularly dangerous at this tier. So there comes the carrier again. This one was a bit luckier in terms of damage. Let's slow down, because the carrier is under attack, so he's maybe not managing his torpedo planes as well as he should. Yep, we've managed to only take 2 of those torpedoes. And I can definitely put the hurt on. Unfortunately, I only have 6 of those guns, and I need to give an uncomfortable amount of broadside to get all of them on target. And at longer ranges, on target is more of a general postcode sort of story. So let's see what we can do there. But there comes the carrier again, and he's obviously going to try and finish me off, because he's seen how much damage he's doing with these AP bombs against this relatively lightly armored ship. And I am turning around here. The rear turret is capable of 360 rotation, so I can get that on target. But I am trying to kill the carrier before he drops the torpedo planes, because then he will lose control, and I am trying to get closer to that thing such that I can get a hit off. Maybe that salvo will do it. So we're already going to slam her in reverse and turn hard left, which takes a little bit of time. Okay, so we've killed the carrier, which means he has no control anymore. But unfortunately, the torpedo drop wasn't aimed where I thought it was going to be. It floods, and I did press the damage control, but it was just not enough. And that was that. I mean, we've done 77,000 points of damage, which isn't bad, but it's taken... it's been hard. It's not been easy. It's not, and the sheer amount of damage that we've taken from the carrier, from the Amagi, gives you a bit of an impression of where the weaknesses of these ships lie, which is good. I mean, it's good for ships to have weaknesses. We've won this, by the way, because there's only one destroyer left, and the carrier is currently trying to flush him out of the smoke there, while the dead carrier's fighters are still being useful. He's getting some plane kills even after a minute after he died, but that's that. And the Shokaku on our team actually takes the win here. But yeah, it's not an easy fight. Far from it. So while these secondaries are powerful, you actually need to have an opportunity to use them, and that is not always given. How has the enemy Zieten has done, like I would have said as well, in this ship. In the second battle, it's a 5v5, and we're playing Golden Channel. So we are up against Gascogne, Amagi, Bismarck, North Carolina, and Algerie. Generally, being in a battleship, I would have said, great. Gascogne, Amagi, lots of damage to farm. Algerie, I can almost one-shot that thing. But yeah, in this ship, it's more difficult. So, first order of business, it's Golden Channel. We need to capture. And taking point is not something that's very good in this thing. The very first thing you do is switch the secondaries to armor piercing and switch the torpedoes to narrow spread, because you've got an extremely long range on these torpedoes, and you need to get into I need to get into position. The second reason why you're not very good at taking point is because of the gun layout, because you only have one turret pointing forwards, which means you're probably better at running away from things and kiting away sort of thing. But that's a difficult proposition to make happen in something as large and as relatively vulnerable as this ship. So we're gonna sit at the island here, because that gives us some island cover, and see what we're going to be spotting. Okay, there's the Gascogne. So we're going to swing the turrets around. We can swing the rear turret around, so technically we do have 2 turrets. The problem is we then need to give about this much of angle. And I don't like giving that much of an angle against something that can hit me back. But yeah, the Gascogne... it's a French battleship, and these are 406mm main guns. So basically these are Freddy guns. So that definitely makes a bit of a difference. But in a position like this, the best you can probably achieve is this sort of getting 4 guns on target, and you're just not going to do an awful lot with... and already I'm going to have to use my first heal here. But we are... Am I the only ship in the capture circle? I usually am the only ship. No, there's somebody else on the other side. So we can inch a bit forward, but yeah, the Kansas is in the capture circle with me. The rest of the team is not so much interested. And the Gascogne is moving forward just at the right moment to run into some of my torpedoes, but because of the range of these things, they've spread out significantly. But right now I've got a bot Mayan which I can ignore, and a North Carolina, so some torpedoes on the North Carolina. I am still going to try and do something about the Mayan because he can set me on fire, and that is annoying. But now we need to go forward again because that North Carolina is swinging his guns around, and that's a North Carolina. And I'm only in its Zieten, so do not want. Let's angle away and get back behind our little island here. And yeah, that hurt, but that could have been a lot worse. So 3 torpedo hits under North Carolina. Unfortunately, I am now somewhat alone because the rest of my team is very much on the other flank and seems to have completely abandoned this side of the game. So I'm going to have to go through the capture circle, which is a bit of a problem because there are a lot of battleships out there still. And I think Kansas is about to go down, so I'm going to try and do what I can here against Gascogne. And just use my guns to once again put the hurt on that thing because it's French, and French I can slap. But there's a Bismarck and it's full health, and there's an Amagi. And if you've seen the last battle, which you probably have unless you skipped ahead, you can see what Amagis can do to this thing. It's not pretty, I can tell you that much. It's out of secondary range. There's Sinop is defensive against the full health Bismarck. Kansas is just suiciding into the enemy team. So I'm going to help out the Sinop here and try to do something about that Bismarck. Unfortunately, Bismarck slows down, which means I'm going to have to do some uncomfortable amount of turning here to get my torpedoes on target, even though these angles are absolutely are great. But my secondaries are now helping out. And he is going forward a little bit again, so I do need to aim a little bit more forward. Now I'm trying to turn the ship the other way. But obviously that means I'm giving broadside to that lot over there, which is not going to look pretty very, very quickly. So I'm just going to drop some torpedoes in the general direction. Maybe they hit something. But that's 3 torpedo hits on the Bismarck, and we're up to 83 secondary battery hits by now. The auto secondaries have made themselves useful. Unless, obviously, the enemy ship's doing something like stupid, like, I don't know, moving backwards or something, in that which case the auto secondaries can't hit them for sure. But they have managed to take out the Bismarck. But I have one more heal coming up, and I have lost a lot of hit points. There comes the carrier. It's just a bot carrier, so I don't really care. But there's that Amagi. I'm going to get a couple shots out, and I'm just trying to slow down and keep the island between myself and the rest of the enemy team. That was a disappointing salvo. It mainly hit the belt. And I'm trying to go bow in towards the Amagi, which means that I'm obviously then giving broadside to these guys over there. Which I've got one more heal, but ow, that was the Amagi slamming me. And even being more or less bow in, that still hurt a lot. Algerie is moving just outside my secondary range. I don't need no hydro to know that these torpedoes were coming. Gascogne is shooting high explosive at me, which means he's not actually a danger to anybody. But that Amagi there, that is my problem, because I'm out of heals. So I'm just gonna throw up the secondary overload and see what I can still do. Maybe I can still farm some damage on the carrier, and maybe I can get another torpedo drop away. But that's about as much. I'm gonna die here to that Amagi because there's no. It was either die to Amagi or die to Algerie Gascogne. It's dead I was gonna be anyway. So let's see if we can still torpedo the carrier. Or if somebody's going to manage to kill him first. Nope, the friendly Amagi has taken him out first. So now, of course, we've lost the capture circle. But I have done a lot of damage to that Gascogne. So if that Hipper isn't completely silly, then he should be able to take that thing out relatively easily. There's also Sinop. There's a one-shot Gascogne. Our Amagi is exploring the far reaches of the map. And I'm not sure what that Hipper is doing, but you can just kill that Gascogne there. Well, the Gascogne is behind the island now. So there's an Algerie. Shoot the Algerie then. Why are you sitting broadside? You're trying to torpedo the Algerie from that range. And you're shooting high explosive at an Algerie. Okay, sure. That's a dead Hipper. Alright, scratch one Hipper. We've still got a almost full health Sinop who can make himself useful. Okay, Hipper has switched to, I think, armor piercing, so maybe that was just a salvo. But yeah, he had no chance at all. What he should have done was disengage from the Algerie and just kill the Gascogne. Okay, Sinop, there's a one-shot Gascogne over there. Would you mind? I mean, we're 25 points ahead. That's good, but can you maybe shoot? No, he's shooting. Oh, he's shooting a Bauwin Amagi that's going defensive. Yeah, that'll go well. Maybe shoot the one-shot Gascogne up there. I mean, as long as he doesn't die, we're winning on points. But if they kill him in the last 15 seconds, Algérie's not going to get torpedoes away. Gascogne is hitting relatively hard, and if they concentrate their fire, they can still take down a Sinop if the Amagi also shoots at him. So Gascogne obviously goes full risk. He knows he's going secondaries in. He knows that they have to kill that Sinop. Algérie is not going to get his torpedoes away anymore, and that was a big hit on the Sinop, but it was just enough to win on points. Yeah. So, Zieten. This is a harsh ship to play. Tier 8 is going to take a while to get through. And this in Tier 8 is a difficult ship to play. I am very much unconvinced at Tier 8. I am curious to see what Tier 9 is going to bring, because we're going to get a lot more torpedoes. And we're going to get a ship with a much less insane layout. So maybe Tier 9 and 10 are going to be better. But Tier 6 was great fun. Tier 7 could be a challenge, but was still doable. Tier 8, is hard. So next week I'm going to start exploring if, I'll take one for the team. Not really, because I already have these ships, but I'm going to go explore if the Tier 9 and 10s are worth it. And if you should stop at like Tier 6, 7. Because the Tier 8 was not fun, in my personal opinion. So maybe also after the new ship press account novelty has worn off and not everybody's trying to shoot you, then things get better. But very, very situational. Can do well if you can keep it to one-on-ones and you stick with island covers. But takes crazy amount of damage from pretty much anything at the tier. So reminded me a bit of the Constellation. Quite a bit, actually. And I wasn't particularly convinced with that ship either. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks, everybody, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.